told me that this is a kairos. Kairos basically means a moment of crisis where decisions have to be made, almost like a moment in time outside time, but changing everything. So that's the sense that I'm still left with. It did bring back some memories. I mean, I've talked a lot about my memories with Maria. My challenging racism my response has always been about wanting to live normally, and that growing up was actually a dangerous thing. I used to love playing tennis, and I didn't respect curfews. If I wanted to play tennis, I'll play tennis, and I know I'll be chased because I'm black. So it wasn't the big organizational politics. And so it has always been at that level for me. The things that are close to me, just living a normal life, being who I believe God has called me to be, and actually realizing that that can be dangerous, and it has been dangerous, but it's not talked about. And these protests coming up, in a sense, came back to kind of, you could say, remind me of that, and that those issues are important, and that maybe we've been thinking about racism in particular ways that have not allowed us to engage with it in this manner. And let me not speak for all of you, but my sense is that generally we've been thinking of racism as an interpersonal thing only, at least more actively. When me as a black person meets Jenny as a white person, what happens there? But actually it's much bigger than that. Have we taken time to think about it that way? Have we taken time to think about it, when we talk about racism? Theologically, I would say, as churches and as Christians, it's much easier when you come from a tradition where we talk about ourselves as sinners. We look only at the perpetrator side of things. But actually, there's a strong push in the Bible, for example, on the victim, the one who sinned against. But we haven't even developed a good language in the church to talk about the sinned against. Our creeds don't say much about it. Our sermons don't say enough about it. What Black Lives Matter has brought forward is, let's look at the effects of all of these things, whether they're done by an individual, by a system, by whatever. And even if it has to be something like so-called black-on-black violence, because actually that also is a product of racism, even if it's done by a black person, because it has to do with whether or not one values a black life. You see what I'm trying to say? And in our situation in South Africa, most of my growing up, most of the brutality that we knew came from a white racist system was actually meted out by black police officers. So there's that level of complexity that we have not even started engaging with it enough. The whole killing of Collins Khoza, that the SANDF soldiers were black doesn't mean it's not racist. They would have done that to a white person. You see, and what Black Lives Matters is that it has helped to turn that around and said, can a black person live normally and feel safe? Or does being black turn one into a victim even if you've done nothing? You see, and in a sense, pause a little bit about only the perpetrator. Not that we don't look at what Chauvin did, but pause a little bit and just look at George Floyd and say, let's learn something from there. Does that tell us that could have that happened to somebody who's white, no matter who does it? So the Black Lives Matter pushes it to that end. And I guess that's why the whole All Lives Matters comes into view, that we are not talking about everybody. And the problem is that, in my experience, it might be difficult to tell a white person, actually, you're not at the center of the conversation. Or to tell a white person, no, you can't do that. It is us who are raised to hear and know, to be told to sit to the side, etc., 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 etc. And I think that's where all lives, not that all lives don't matter, but the thing is, at the moment, we are looking at the victim. Actually, we are not even looking at the perpetrator. I don't know if you see what I'm trying to say. It's not the perpetrator who's center stage, it's the victim. So perpetrator, maybe listen for a moment, because otherwise tables just change quickly in the conversation. And when they turn around, then there's issues of guilt, etc., etc. When we have not even digested what is it that is really happening to black people? What is it that is generating self-hate? What is it that's generating poverty, death, bad health outcomes, etc., 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 etc. Before we finish that, we're already talking about the perpetrator and the guilt. You see? And I think what Black Lives Matter has done is that it has brought that. It says, well, let's take a moment and ask ourselves if we even know what racism is. and let's study it from. So for me, it brought a whole lot of those things that can I live normally as a black person and be safe? And yeah, of course, if that blows away, I'll still be left with that question. Whether or not racism is talked about or not, I live with that.
So you touched on our next question, which is, why is the phrase "all lives matter" offensive and insensitive?
Yeah. I guess I've used my airtime on that one. Let's hear what others think about it.
I'm happy to comment.
Cool.
So I think the fact is that all lives don't matter until Black lives matter. That's just the fact. And I think a really great example that I heard from a YouTuber who's based in the States, he's Black American. And the example that he used is that people will raise money and create awareness for causes that they believe in. And if, say, you're at a cancer walk or a cancer run, and the whole point is to raise awareness for cancer, it's what does it look like if you run into that walk or that run with a sign saying all terminal diseases matter? It's the exact same concept. And it's not to say people are raising awareness about the plight of being a Black person to the detriment of all the others. It's about saying right now we need to focus on the Black ones because those are the ones that are in huge danger. Same with the cancer walk versus all the other diseases. And I think people are getting a little bit sensitive. They're not seeing that as a Black person, it's difficult to live in this world. I can't walk into a shop without at least 3 people between security and shop attendants looking at me and checking that I'm not stealing something. I've had people ask me if they can help me when I'm in a shop because they assume that I can't afford it or I'm there to do something nefarious. And that's not an existence. And that's the point, is that people stigmatize us by the color of our skin. In this world right now, being Black, just the existence, the fact that we are alive is a radical thing. I can walk into boardrooms, I can do things, and it's a shock because I'm Black. And that's the problem. It shouldn't be radical just to live.
I would also like to argue that it doesn't even matter what the words are. Like the words "all lives matter" is in and of itself is just a phrase, but the point is that it's being used as someone says Black lives matter and someone says no, all lives matter. And so it doesn't even matter what phrase is chosen. The point is that the phrase is being used to disagree or overwrite that Black lives matter. And that's a problem because Black lives do matter, and this is something we need to be thinking about and talking about right now.
It's used as a muzzle. It's actually, it's what the phrase is used for. It just silences.
Yeah.
And it's a little hypocritical, even the statement to say all lives matter, because how can you say all lives matter when certain lives are under attack constantly? So do they all matter? Yeah. No, they don't. So it is, in that sense, it is kind of offensive. And it's just like really hypocritical. That's all there is to say about it.
I actually saw a tweet by someone called Mark D. McCoy, and he talked about being also accused of bringing in a fake $20, using a fake $20 bill. And he and that's like a story he tells at parties for fun, whilst when George Floyd was accused of it, he got killed. So if we see lives being treated differently, we have to focus on the lives that are in danger in a way, like we've talked about. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely used as like a silencing thing to say all lives matter. The people who say all lives matter, if they were saying that sincerely, then they'd be shouting Black Lives Matter the loudest.